For 18 years, one place held my family together. A lake house built with love, memories, and sacrifices nobody seemed to remember anymore. My name is Margaret Collins. I am 67 years old, and until recently, I believed traditions could survive almost anything. Every wall in that house carried a story. Birthdays. Holidays. Summers that felt endless. My husband Robert built most of it himself, one project at a time, year after year. We were never wealthy. We simply invested everything we had into a dream. Robert used to say the lake gave people room to remember what mattered. When Ryan was a child, this place was magic to him. Every summer, we came together here as a family. Some of Ryan's happiest childhood memories happened on that water. Then Robert died. And suddenly it became my responsibility to keep everything together. Every year, I opened the house before everyone arrived. I bought the food, paid the bills, and handled every detail. Nobody asked me to. I did it because family mattered. Eventually Ryan grew up and started bringing his own family. Ashley always seemed more interested in the property than the memories. At first, I ignored the little things. Ashley often talked about updates, resale value, and improvements. She never talked about history. Only value. What bothered me most was that Ryan never corrected her. I began noticing things I had missed before. Every year, more of Ashley's family came. Somehow, the house started feeling less like ours. I did all the work while everyone else enjoyed the tradition. One evening, I overheard a conversation I was never meant to hear. She asked Ryan how much the lake property might be worth someday. Then Ryan said something I never forgot. He said, "It'll be ours eventually." Eventually. Not if. Eventually. The next warning arrived 1 year later. This time, it came through a text message. I had no idea that a single message was about to change everything. 1 week before the annual trip, Ashley called first. Her voice was sweet, but I could hear the decision had already been made without me. She told me her parents were coming this year, as if she were informing hotel staff instead of speaking to the woman who owned the house. She said Frank and Denise needed a comfortable room, and then she paused just long enough to make the next demand feel polite. When Ashley asked for the master suite, I thought of Robert standing in that unfinished room, sanding the window frame with his tired hands. Robert built that room for me. He said I deserved to wake up to the lake after a lifetime of putting everyone else first. So when Ashley said it was only a room, I understood she had never seen it as memory. She saw it as space. She reminded me that I was only one person, while her parents were guests who deserved comfort. I told her the master suite was mine. For a moment, the line went quiet. Ashley did not argue with me directly. She said Ryan would talk to me, and I knew then that she had already moved him to her side. That night, I sat with the keys in my hand and wondered when my son stopped seeing the difference between inheritance and permission. The next morning, Ryan did not call. He sent a text message. "Mom, don't come to the lake house this year. Ashley's parents need the master suite. You can stay home and watch the dogs. We'll send pictures." I read it once. Then twice. Then a third time, because my heart refused to understand what my eyes had already seen. I did not cry. I did not call him back. I did not ask why his wife's parents mattered more than his mother. I looked out at the old oak tree Robert planted the year Ryan was born and felt something inside me become very still. Then I opened my contacts and found the name I had ignored for 6 years. Daniel Reeves had wanted the lake property for a long time. Every year he made an offer. Every year I said no. This time, when he answered, I said, "Daniel, are you still interested in the lake parcel?" There was a pause. Then his voice changed. "Very interested," he said. I told him I wanted cash, fast closing, as is, including the house. He asked when. I looked at Ryan's message one more time and said, today. By noon, Daniel's attorney was already reviewing the paperwork. By then, I had driven to the lake house alone. I walked through the kitchen and touched the cabinets Robert made with his own hands. I stood on the screened porch where our family used to laugh until the mosquitoes chased us inside. Then I went into the master bedroom, the room my son had decided I no longer deserved. I touched the smooth wood Robert had sanded and whispered an apology to a man who would have understood. At 2 o'clock, the final documents were ready. At 4, the sale was complete. My hand did not shake when I signed. Not because it was easy, but because clarity can feel stronger than grief. Before sunset, I handed Daniel the keys to the house Robert built for love, not disrespect. As I drove away, I did not feel revenge. I felt release. Ryan had told me not to come, and I had finally listened. The next morning, Ryan packed the car as if nothing had changed. He still believed the lake house was waiting for him. Ashley moved around like a hostess preparing to enter property she already considered hers. Even the dogs looked unsure, as if they understood they had been part of a plan that did not belong to them. I stayed at my own kitchen table with a cup of tea, waiting for the moment reality would meet entitlement. Ryan drove toward the lake with suitcases, guests, and the confidence of a man who had never questioned access. Ashley texted her parents about dinner plans and fresh linens, unaware the house had changed hands before sunset. Frank and Denise followed behind, expecting the master suite they had never earned. Claire Morris saw the cars before anyone else did. She called me immediately. When Claire's name appeared on my screen, I knew they had arrived. The first thing they saw was not the lake. It was the red sold sign standing in the yard like a verdict. Ryan got out first. Claire told me he stood perfectly still, as if the sign were written in another language. Ashley reached it next, her face changing from irritation to panic. That sign said what I had been too patient to say for years: this was never yours. Ryan went to the door anyway. He still thought keys meant ownership. But Daniel had changed the locks that morning. The door did not open. For the first time, Ryan felt what it was like to be refused entry. Ashley began calling me before Ryan did. I let the phone ring. 1 call became 3. 3 became 9. I waited until the panic had fully bloomed. When I finally answered, Ryan did not say hello. He demanded to know what was going on. I asked him what he meant, even though we both knew exactly what he was standing in front of. He said there was a sold sign in front of the house. I said yes. The silence after that word was almost peaceful. Then I told him the truth. I sold the lake house. For a few seconds, my son forgot how to speak. Ashley took the phone and said I could not do that. She sounded like a guest complaining to management. I reminded her that the woman she had tried to remove was the owner. Her parents stood there with luggage, no room, and no dignity left to borrow. Ryan said this was family property. That was the lie I finally refused to carry. I told him it was my property, built by my husband, maintained by my labor, and sold by my decision. By the time the sun started falling over the lake, they had nowhere to stay and no one left to blame but themselves. When Ryan accused me of overreacting, I ended the call. For years, I had underreacted. That was the truth. The lake trip collapsed in the driveway, surrounded by luggage and the silence of people learning consequences. Frank and Denise left first. The master suite they had demanded no longer existed for them. Ryan stayed longer, staring at the house as if regret could unlock a door. By evening, the family story had already changed. I was being called angry, cruel, and dramatic. When my granddaughter asked if I sold the house because I was mad, I told her the truth: I sold it because I finally remembered it was mine. 1 week later, Ryan came to my house without Ashley. I opened the door halfway, because forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. He told me I had cost him his vacation, his reputation, and his wife's trust. I listened until I understood he was still grieving his embarrassment more than my pain. Then I reminded him that he told his own mother not to come to her own home. For the first time, he did not defend the message. I told him the tradition ended the moment he decided I was replaceable. He asked if we could get it back. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was too late. Months later, the developer began clearing the property. I watched from the road only once. I had already said goodbye in the room Robert built for me. When the house came down, I expected to break. Instead, I felt the weight of obligation lift. With part of the money, I bought a small cottage 2 towns over, near a quiet river. It had 1 bedroom, a sunny kitchen, and no master suite for anyone to fight over. For the first time in years, I prepared a home only for peace. Late that summer, Ryan called and asked if he could visit alone. He arrived with no suitcase, no demands, and no wife speaking for him. I let him inside, not because everything was fixed, but because humility deserves a chair at the table. We drank coffee in a kitchen too small for pride to hide in. He told me he had treated the lake house like inheritance instead of memory. That was the first honest sentence he had given me in years. I told him the lake house was never the inheritance. The lesson was. He looked at his father's photograph and finally saw more than property. I never regretted selling the lake house. It had been built from love, and love no longer lived there. My son told me not to come. He thought he was giving instructions. Instead, he gave me clarity: you cannot inherit what you refuse to respect.